You won't believe the wild neighbor drama I've been dealing with, especially when it all started with something as simple as a mailbox. Every week, without fail, my mailbox would end up smashed, bent, or completely destroyed. And it wasn't an accident? No. My neighbor Karen had been deliberately smashing it with his truck. At first, I thought maybe it was just careless driving, but the pattern was too clear to ignore. Every time I fixed or replaced the mailbox, it would be wrecked again in a few days. It felt like a never-ending cycle, and honestly, it was driving me crazy. What made it even worse was how tense things got every time I tried to talk to Karen. Instead of owning up or calming down, he seemed to get more aggressive, and the whole neighborhood started noticing the ongoing conflict. You might think it's just a small, petty dispute over a mailbox, but it quickly became something way bigger. It's not just about mail anymore, it's about respect, boundaries, and standing your ground when someone keeps crossing the line. I knew I had to do something different this time because clearly just replacing the mailbox wasn't working. So I came up with a plan that would make Karen think twice before smashing it again. Instead of another flimsy mailbox, I replaced it with something he couldn't easily destroy. Something with steel and strength built right in. But here's the thing: this move didn't just stop the destruction, it changed everything about how this feud unfolded. What happened next was totally unexpected, and it made me realize there's a lot more going on under the surface than just a smashed mailbox. Stick around because I'm about to share the full story how the steel-filled log mailbox became the ultimate game changer and what Karen's next move was. You won't want to miss this. Before I tell you exactly what I did with that mailbox, let me give you some background on how things got to this point. Karen isn't just any neighbor. He's the kind of guy who's always looking for a way to stir up trouble. At first, we tried to keep things civil, thinking maybe it was just some accidental bumps or careless driving. But when the third mailbox got totaled, it was clear this was no accident. Karen had a history of being aggressive about the smallest things: parking disputes, loud music, you name it. But nothing felt quite as personal as the mailbox. I think the real problem started when I planted a small flower bed right next to the driveway, where Karen usually parked his truck. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just wanted to spruce up the place. But Karen didn't like it. He started parking farther out on the street, and soon after, the mailbox started to get hit every time he backed out. Every time I asked him about it, he brushed me off or acted like it wasn't a big deal. It felt like he was testing me, seeing if I'd just let it slide. What made it worse was how the rest of the neighborhood reacted. Some people took Karen's side, saying maybe I was being too sensitive. Others felt bad for me but didn't want to get involved. It was like I was stuck in this silent battle with no clear way to stop it. I didn't want to escalate things with the police or get legal, but it was getting harder and harder to ignore. That's when I started thinking about a solution that wasn't just about replacing the mailbox again. I needed something strong, something that would send a clear message without causing more conflict. I wanted to protect my property, but I also wanted Karen to realize that this couldn't go on. What I did next changed the whole game, but it also opened up a new set of challenges I wasn't expecting. The story isn't over yet. Things are just heating up as the mailbox saga dragged on. I started noticing other signs that things between Karen and me were getting more complicated than just a property dispute. It wasn't just about the smashed mailbox anymore. It felt like a power struggle. Karen seemed determined to push boundaries, and I was equally determined not to back down. The tension was growing, not only between us, but also within the neighborhood. People began whispering, and every time Karen drove by, I could feel the weight of his glare. One subplot that made everything messier was how some neighbors reacted. A few of them were on Karen's side, claiming I was overreacting or provoking him by putting up that flower bed near his parking spot. They'd say things like, "Maybe you should have talked to him first," or "It's just a mailbox." Why? Make a big deal out of it. That felt unfair, because it wasn't about a mailbox anymore. It was about respect and fairness. Others tried to stay neutral, hoping this would blow over, but I could tell the neighborhood vibe was shifting. It was hard to keep peace when everyone had their own opinion on who was right. Meanwhile, Karen started doing other things that raised my suspicion. There were times I'd find trash scattered near my yard, and once a suspicious dent showed up on my car door. It was like the mailbox was just the beginning of a longer, unspoken war. I tried to stay calm and not jump to conclusions, but it was getting harder to ignore these signs. It felt like Karen was testing me at every turn, seeing how much I'd tolerate before I'd push back harder. On my side, I kept thinking about what the steel-filled log mailbox would represent. It wasn't just a tough mailbox. It was a symbol of standing up for myself and drawing a line that couldn't be crossed. But even with that, I worried about what might happen next. Would Karen finally back off, or would things escalate in a way none of us expected? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about a mailbox. It was about how far neighbors would go when respect is lost. And that tension was only getting worse. Every day, the tension in the neighborhood felt heavier, like a storm waiting to break. After installing that steel-filled log mailbox, I thought maybe Karen would finally get the message and back off. But instead, things took a darker turn. It wasn't just about careless damage anymore. It felt personal, almost like he was trying to challenge me in front of everyone. I started noticing his truck lingering near my driveway more often, sometimes even late at night. It gave me a weird feeling, like he was waiting for the perfect moment to act again. The other neighbors began whispering more openly now, some warning me to be careful, others quietly watching to see how this would play out. The whole street felt on edge, like we were all waiting for something to explode. Even simple things like checking the mail became nerve-wracking, wondering if the mailbox would survive another attack or if Karen would go even further this time. One afternoon, caught a glimpse of Karen talking to a couple of friends near his truck. Their expressions were serious, and they kept glancing over at my house. I didn't know if they were plotting something or just discussing the ongoing feud. But it was clear Karen wasn't planning to give up easily. At the same time, started hearing rumors that Karen might try to find a way around the steel log mailbox, maybe even something more aggressive. That thought sent a chill down my spine. What if this escalated beyond just property damage? I kept preparing, thinking about how to protect my home and stand my ground without making things worse. But deep down, I knew that whatever happened next could change everything between us and possibly the whole neighborhood. The question wasn't if Karen would strike again, but when and how bad it would be. The days passed slowly, each one building more suspense. I was caught between wanting peace and bracing for the storm. The mailbox wasn't just a mailbox anymore, it was a symbol of the battle that was about to reach its breaking point. And just when I thought I was ready, the moment came that turned everything upside down. But that part, you'll have to wait for the next chapter. Just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, something unexpected happened that turned everything upside down. One morning, I woke up to find a note taped to my front door, no signature. No explanation, just a simple message that said, "You're playing a dangerous game." At first, I wasn't sure if it was a prank or a warning, but the tone sent chills down my spine. It was clear Karen wasn't just upset about the mailbox anymore. This had become personal. Maybe even something darker. That same day, I noticed a new set of tire tracks in my yard, fresh and close to the steel-filled mailbox. Someone had tried to ram it hard enough to test its strength, but luckily, the damage was minimal. Whoever did it wanted to make sure I knew they were still watching, still pushing back. It wasn't just about destruction now. It felt like intimidation. Then came the biggest surprise. A neighbor I hadn't really talked to before pulled me aside and told me something that made my jaw drop. Apparently, Karen had been complaining to the homeowners association about me, not about the mailbox, but about other issues around my property. It seemed like he was trying to build a case, turning the community against me. The neighbors who once stayed neutral now seemed to be leaning closer to Karen's side. And I felt more isolated than ever. This twist changed everything. What started as a simple feud over a mailbox was quickly spiraling into a much bigger battle, one involving community politics, secret alliances, and a rising level of fear. I realized this wasn't just about standing up to one aggressive neighbor anymore. It was about protecting my home, my reputation, and my peace of mind. As the days passed, I could sense Karen gearing up for something even bigger. The steel-filled mailbox was no longer just a symbol of resistance, had become the spark for a conflict that might change the neighborhood forever. The tension was unbearable, and I knew the climax was coming. What would Karen do? The tension finally reached its breaking point one late evening, when I heard the unmistakable roar of Karen's truck barreling down the street, heading straight for my mailbox. But this time, it wasn't just a quick smash and retreat. I grabbed my phone and rushed outside, determined to catch whatever was about to happen. As his truck came closer, I could see the anger in his eyes. This wasn't just frustration anymore. It was full-on rage. Karen slammed the truck into the steel-filled log mailbox with all his might. But to his shock, the mailbox barely budged. The steel core absorbed the impact, leaving the mailbox almost untouched. Furious, he got out of his truck, shouting and banging on the mailbox. But I stood my ground, calmly filming everything on my phone. The neighbors, drawn by the noise, began to come outside. And suddenly, the quiet street was buzzing with eyes on the conflict, just as Karen seemed to be losing control. The unexpected happened. One of the neighbors who had been quiet all along stepped forward and said something that silenced everyone. "Karen, this has to stop. We're all tired of the fighting." To my surprise, she wasn't on Karen's side before, but now she was urging him to cool down. It was like the community itself was stepping in, making it clear that this feud couldn't continue. In that moment, Karen's anger seemed to crack. He muttered something under his breath, and then, without another word, got back in his truck and drove off. It felt like the storm had passed, but just when I thought it was over, I found another note taped to my mailbox. This one was different. It said, "You win for now." That final twist left me wondering what Karen was really planning next. The steel-filled mailbox had stopped the physical damage. But the real battle, maybe the one we couldn't see yet, was still far from over. Whatever happens, I'm ready to face it. Because sometimes standing up for yourself means expecting the unexpected. After that intense night, things slowly started to change in the neighborhood. Karen didn't smash the mailbox again, and the tension between us seemed to ease at least. On the surface, the steel-filled log mailbox had done more than just protect my property. It had sent a message that I wasn't going to let this go without standing up for myself. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about respect and boundaries. And finally, those lines were clear. Interestingly, some neighbors who had stayed quiet or taken Karen's side began reaching out, apologizing for not supporting me sooner, or admitting they didn't realize how serious the situation had become. It made me realize how easy it is for conflicts like this to divide a community, and how important it is to address issues before they spiral out of control. The Homeowners Association also stepped in to remind everyone about keeping peace and respecting each other's property, which helped cool things down further. As for Karen, I never got a clear explanation or apology. But the occasional note left behind told me he was thinking twice about crossing that line again. Sometimes people show their feelings in unexpected ways, and while this wasn't the resolution I imagined, it was enough to move forward. Looking back, this whole experience taught me a lot about standing firm without escalating conflict, and how small actions like a mailbox scan symbolize much bigger struggles. Neighbors are supposed to look out for each other, but sometimes it takes setting boundaries to find that balance. So if you're dealing with a difficult neighbor or a similar situation, remember this: protect what's yours, communicate when you can, and don't be afraid to stand your ground. The steel-filled mailbox wasn't just a defense, it was a turning point. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the story. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. Hope it inspires you to handle your own challenges with courage and calm.